All right, so welcome back again to another episode of the Healthy Baking. Today we're making the strawberry and cream filled cream puffs. So we'll be making the shell today, the pastry cream, some whipped cream, and then I'll be showing you how to fill and decorate them. So to start, we have
You sure you don't want to watch this cooking class? No?
I'm gonna steal the recipe over here. Anything?
Perfect.
All right, so for starting the cream puffs, we're gonna make kind of like a roux when you're doing soups and stuff. So it's gonna be half a cup of water. That'll go right into the pan. 2/3 a cup of milk. I have been making this recipe at home with oat milk, and it's been coming out exactly the same. So if you guys have any dairy problems, then this can be made dairy-free very easily. And then we're gonna drop an entire stick of butter in with it. I use unsalted butter, just so that I can add my own salt into it. But if you guys only have unsalted or salted butter, or if that's just what you want to use, just skip the salt step. Don't add that. Grab a teaspoon. Gonna be half a teaspoon of the salt. Just kind of eyeballing it. And then 2 full teaspoons of sugar. And then I'm going to put this down on the stove so that everything boils and comes together. And then while we're keeping an eye on this, we're just going to crack our eggs into a bowl for the next step. I'm just using the same measurement that I use to measure out my milk and water, just to save on some dirty dishes. I think in the recipe I gave you guys, it says 4 to 5 eggs. I almost always use 5 eggs.
When did you send the recipe out? Because I didn't get it.
The recipe link was sent out last week, but I can make sure anybody who didn't get it. It was just a link.
I can't hear her.
The recipe link was sent out, but I will make sure you get it if you didn't get it. It was just a
Okay.
link that you would have had to click on to get to the recipe.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We'll also measure out our cup of flour that's gonna go in here as well. If you guys make, totally just hit my head on this.
Oh dear.
If you guys are making these and you enjoy it, other ideas to do with this, I've made savory crepes before, and cut back the sugar a bit and added like black pepper or basil or something into the mix instead. And then I filled them with mashed potatoes. So if you guys are looking for alternate ideas with these, that one came out really well.
Does that have to be boiling?
Yeah, so all of the butter just melted. It should be about a minute more until it comes up to a boil. It all happens really fast because there's so little in the pan. But yeah, it will come up to a boil. You do want to make sure you're keeping an eye on it because with the cream and the butter in here, if it does start to boil, it'll start to raise up the pan and you don't want it to boil over. All right, so we have a boil now. I'm going to take out my spatula. I'm going to switch over to the whisk. And I'm going to slowly whisk in the flour. You might get a couple clumps, but that's okay. When you're mixing it later, all of the clumps will kind of work themselves out. And then when it all comes into a nice neat ball together, tap out the whisk and then switch back over to the spatula. So I think you can see it a little bit, but this is what it ends up looking like. So we'll keep on cooking it a little bit. It'll start to develop a little bit of color. You're kind of looking for it to dry out. It'll kind of start sticking to the bottom of the pan a little bit. If you notice any of the flour clumps in there, you can just kind of like push them down, try and work them out a little bit.
Do you let it cool before you drop the eggs in there?
I will, yes. So what I usually do is I'll pop it into the mixer.
Oh.
And I use my stand mixer. But if you guys are using like a hand mixer, or even if you're just doing it by hand, I usually just do a little bit of hand mixing for a little bit until it cools down, enough for you to touch it with your hand. And then once when it gets there, you can add the eggs in and you won't have to worry about them cooking while they're getting mixed in. Turn this down just a little bit. When you're doing this, you'll be able to see your flour mixture in here. It starts to dry out a little bit. It turns a little bit yellow, just from the little bit of cooking that it gets. And you'll kind of start to smell that the flour is getting a bit cooked in there. And once when it gets to that point, you can turn the heat off. And I'm going to bring this back over to my mixer. This is what we have. It's nice and cooked. It stays together pretty well, so we're gonna toss it all in there. So I have my mixer on low speed just to kind of get all of the heat mixed out of it a little bit. I have my eggs, they're pre-cracked in the bowl. We're just gonna give it about a minute or two until it starts to cool down a little bit. In the meantime, my oven is preheated up to 450. So we're gonna, once when all of these are piped out, we'll drop it down to 375. That is so that the heat has a chance to get to the cream puff and it causes it to rise, but it doesn't cook it too fast so it burns it. And then when you drop it down, it lets it dry out of it. So we're really only putting it up to 450 for a minute, and then we drop it right back down. All right. So I'm going to start adding in the eggs. You're gonna want to do it one at a time and let it fully mix in before you add your next egg so that you can keep an eye on how the batter looks.
Pat, can you repeat the oven again?
So when we put the cream puffs into the oven after we pipe them all out, it's going to start out at 450. That's going to be so that the cream puffs has a chance to kind of rise up. But then we drop it down to 375 so that once when they do get that nice little dome, it doesn't burn them and it gives them a chance to kind of dry out and get hollow before it starts to get them too dark.
Okay, because over here, I don't have where it says 450. Under, it just says 375.
Okay. Well, I have a printed out version of it. It's right underneath all of the ingredients. It says preheat to 450, and then it goes into how to make the recipe. So I can show you
Okay.
here.
Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. I didn't, it would hit me in the face if,
So I'll show you guys what I have now. When you're mixing up the dough, it'll kind of look like it's separating a little bit with all of the eggs in it. But once when you get the right amount of eggs in it and it's had a chance to all come together, it'll start to look more like a paste, and that's what you're looking for. It'll have a little bit of a shine to it. It might look a little bit grainy, but that's okay because it'll smooth itself out. You're good. So this is what we have. It's nice and thick. You can kind of spin it around and it'll hold its shape. So at this point, we're going to put it into a piping bag. All right. And if you're baking solo, a little trick that I like to use is using a cup. You can actually put the bag over the cup so that you can get everything in there without having to try and hold it in your hand and scoop it all in there. And then the way to do the pastry bag is you hold it up against the bag. You kind of see where the tip kind of falls in place. So it would look right here. You're going to do just a little bit down below it so that it has room for the tip to pop out. We're gonna turn the bag inside out just at the top so that we don't make a mess on the outside of it. I'm gonna flip the tip up so that it doesn't drain into the bowl, and I'm just gonna toss it right in there. All right. So this is my baking pan. I sprayed the bottom of it and then lined the top of it with parchment paper. I only sprayed it so that the parchment paper doesn't move around. It's better than putting the cream puff paste underneath the pastry, the parchment paper, so that it doesn't burn or get stuck or stain your pan. The other way that you can do it is spraying the entire sheet down and then coating it with flour. If you do it that way, you can actually create little indents with like a cup or your piping tip, whatever, to give you a guideline of where you should be piping your cream puffs. I think you can see that. So if you want a bite-sized piece, let's say you would want to pipe it just larger than a quarter, I would say. But I kind of like to make mine bigger, worth a couple good bites of it. So I'm going to pipe mine a little bit bigger. That's about where I like to do mine. So I'll do 4 across the top and then in between, and then I'll alternate the 2. So try and make sure they're all even, but if not, it's okay. You want to make sure they've got a good amount of spacing in between because they do rise up a lot. These are ones that I did earlier that are from the same size, and you can see how much of a difference in height and that they come out to be. So make sure you got. What's that?
I said, wow.
Okay, sorry.
So just technically like advanced piping skills.
I would say these are fairly easy. So these would be a good beginner recipe for piping at least. You want to keep your bag straight up and down. I like to create something that's kind of comfortable to hold in my hand. So if you find that your bag is too big to hold comfortably, just kind of push some of the product up top. So it's on top of your hand, and then you can twist it and create a more comfortable hold for yourself. And then straight up and down. Don't move it at all. Just squeeze until you get to the amount you want, and then you just kind of pull it sideways, and it'll help without putting a peak on your cream puff. And then I'm going to cheat a little bit. I have one other design that I kind of think that you guys might enjoy. So this is a star tip. I am using the 824. So I'm just gonna kind of hold it on there. I did it earlier, it worked out fine, but just so you guys can see it, turn the pan so it's comfortable, and then you start by making a little shell around the same size, and then you'll kind of pull it off. So it has a little bit of like a teardrop shape. So you'll pipe it and pull it. More. All right. So I'm going to toss these into the oven now. I'll show you guys what those will turn into later. Thank you. So like I said earlier, this kind of moves around, you know, it might be hard to pipe on top of. So I just like to give it a couple spurts. And now this stays in place. So I'm going to take, should just be a really tiny bit, but I'm going to take the remaining paste that's in here. I'm going to use a sandwich bag for this part. Try and get the rest of the dough out of there. Don't let it stick. I'm just gonna cut off a really super teeny hole in it. Maybe. Okay. So we've got just a really small amount on the bag. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is create kind of like a little head. They're gonna look like an S with two little like balls at the end of it. And I'll show you what we do with them later. But you'll do, let's see, can you get that? Yeah, here we go. So it's gonna be, my hands in the way. A little dot, and then you'll follow through with an S, create another little dot at the top, and then you'll kind of drag it down and create a little point on it. I'm gonna finish up with those.
She's gonna turn this into something fancy, everybody.
Good
You're gonna love it.
job doing that.
One more. I think we can get one more. Here we go. So I'm going to set these aside because they really don't take a long time to bake. Actually, they're upside down. So those are what they look like. And I'm going to take just a second to pick up my station a little bit before we move on to the pastry cream.
I'm pretty sure on the TV shows, this is where they put the commercial breaks.
All right, and for those of you who don't know, pastry cream is just a fancy way of saying pudding. So if you want to do this at home, but you don't want to do the work of making this pastry cream, you can buy yourself pre-made Jell-O or pre-made pudding, or you could just buy like the Jell-O pudding packs and make it at home with, you know, like instant pudding. But you know, we have to do things the hard way here. So. So I'm going to start out by separating my egg yolks. Put the egg yolks into a bowl. Save the egg whites. I think last month was the time I did some marshmallows for the lemon bars. So that would be a good way to use up your egg whites, especially now with I did that wrong. Especially now with campfire season coming up, it's a great time to test your marshmallow making skills.
I tried the lemon curd, it wouldn't get thick.
Oh, really?
Nope, I could not make it thick. But the pastry part came out good.
Okay, good. Got a little egg white in there, but that's okay. Even when you baked it, it still wouldn't thicken up at all?
No, when I was cooking it over the stove,
Oh, okay.
it wouldn't thicken, so I didn't put it on the what do you call it, on the pastry. I was kind of disappointed because you did it so easy.
It did take a while. So I don't know, maybe if you might have needed to cook it a little longer. But even so, there was a different recipe that I had tried out that was completely liquid, and they just threw it on top of the
Oh,
dough. And it worked just fine. I wasn't a super fan of it though because it cracked a lot. And I think that was because it went in as a liquid. But it would have been able to work. It might have just not looked the same.
you know what? I didn't even think about doing that. Because you didn't do it, so I didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, you know,
It's okay.
lesson learned. You can do it next time though.
Yeah, I will. I'll do it again.
All right, so we have 6 egg yolks here. We're gonna add the cornstarch into it. Sorry, I need to wash my hands. I did turn the oven down as well. So it really only needs to be in there for a minute before you turn the heat down to 375. So we're gonna do a tablespoon. How many? All right. I don't have a tablespoon measurement, but there are 3 teaspoons and a tablespoon. So this should take 6 teaspoons plus 1.5. All right. Gonna whisk that together. And we're gonna measure out 1/3 of a cup. And half of that is gonna go with your egg mixture. And that can just be eyeballed, it doesn't have to be exact. And the other half is gonna go in the pan where you're gonna throw your milk in. So we'll just mix all that together. And then we will add in our vanilla on top of our eggs. I know I wrote the recipe as a tablespoon. It is a lot. I like a lot of vanilla, but if you guys are not a fan, then you can reduce the amount a little bit. Or you could switch it out for something else entirely. It's all up to you. I've done this recipe with orange before, adding a little orange zest into the eggs instead, and it comes out really well. I love orange though. And then 2 cups of milk. Go right into the pot, and then we're going to toss it onto the stove and bring it up to a boil.
hit your head.
Hopefully it's not pointy.
It's the first week that you hit your head. I didn't hit mine.
All right, so I'm gonna let that come up to a boil. I'm gonna bring my eggs over. This is another one of those recipes that'll take a bit to come together. It's very similar to a curd. It's just got the cream instead of lemon juice. I also did make this recipe at home. I used oat milk with it as well, and it came out exactly the same. So if you guys, again, are struggling with eating dairy or just don't want to, then it does work just as well with any kind of milk substitute.
So our next program will be in August. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Are peaches in season then? Is that like peach season? When's that?
Peach season,
Should be soon, right?
yeah. I did just buy peaches the other day.
I was thinking of another seasonal recipe we could do in August. Maybe a peach something.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe a panna cotta for next week or a next episode.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Just because it can be easily dairy free, it's naturally gluten free, and it doesn't have eggs in it, so it's very friendly to all of the allergies that anybody might have. And you can do almost any flavor, and it's just a good recipe. So,
Sounds good.
are you guys all cool with doing a panna cotta for the next class?
Yes.
Any flavors that somebody might prefer? I'll work on anything.
I like anything, so don't matter.
Okay. All right, we're starting to steam, so we should be pretty close. You can tell milk is about to boil because it will start to get kind of like a foam or a froth on the top of it. So once you see that, you kind of want to stand by it. But if you don't have that yet, then you can walk around. think we mentioned it last month, but we will be skipping next month's baking class. I'll actually be getting married next month, so I'll be a little too busy to do a baking class here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, just got his mic off.
And congratulations to you too, Connor. I know you're on the call here.
All right, so we got a boil. I kind of like to let it come up to the top of the pan. It's a fun little dangerous game we play. Try and stop it before it gets to the top of the pan. Sometimes you don't, and that's okay. Give this a little mix just to make sure it's all combined. And then we're going to add about half of the cream in this pot into the eggs. So we're just going to mix while we pour. And then we're going to add all of the egg and cream mixture back into the cooking pot.
Doesn't they cook the eggs?
Yeah, so this stage is called tempering. So it's going to help cook the eggs, but not curdle them. So now the eggs will be nice and combined with all of the milk instead of kind of like getting,
Oh boy.
yeah. I've done this a million times. Even when I've like poured the milk into the pan and let it sit for a minute, I've not curdled my eggs. And if you do, then you can either just toss it in a blender, or when you're done with it, just strain it out and it'll take care of all the chunks. So I'm returning this back on at low to medium heat. And we're going to wait for this to come back up to another boil. This one's going to be more of a slow boil, and it's going to kind of look like it's cooking unevenly, but just keep on mixing it and it'll all thicken up at the same time and come together. Just don't worry. Ooh, that actually came together really fast. I made this earlier and it took it forever, but right now it came together. It's nice and thick. You can see it holds itself in the spatula. It'll have a little bubbles that come to the surface and burst. They're more like air pockets and not so much of a boil. But when you get there, you can remove it from the heat. What I like to do is set some parchment down on a pan. Actually, if your pan is clean, you don't even need to do this step. So we're just gonna dump all of our pastry cream right out onto the pan. And spread it as thin as you can get it. Doesn't have to be even, just spread it nice and thin. It is very hot, so be careful you don't get your fingers in there. You just did.
Or anyone else's.
All right, and then we're gonna put the parchment right on top of it and pop it in the fridge. The thin layer helps it cool faster, and spreading it evenly helps it get a nice even cool on it. So I'm gonna toss this into the freezer, and it should only take like 10 minutes to get it cooled to where you're gonna want it.
You have to work on getting one of those flash freezers too, like the TV shows.
Yeah.
Now that would take it probably 30 seconds to get all
Right.
the chill out of it. They're nice. All right, so now we have all of our cooking done. I want to check on this.
Come back over here.
Okay. All right, and now we are back to working with our cream puffs. So I have strawberries that I have all cut up already. I know I told you guys that there were 2 different ways that we could do it, where you either cut them into slices or dice them up really small, like I've done with these ones. That's completely up to you. Whatever your preference is, you can go ahead and do. Does not matter either way. They're all going to taste the same. So to get these ready, I'm just going to push some strawberries aside. All right, so we're going to cut them in half. You can either cut them closer to the bottom, like that, so that it can fill up the top, or you can cut them a little bit closer to the top so that it's more like a bowl instead. So all just depends on how you want your cream puffs to look. So those are 2 different ways of cutting them. The other way you can do it is stabbing a hole through the bottom. So you'll create like a little X. And then whatever your piping tip is going to be, you'll just kind of like stick it in there. And that'll create a hole on the bottom for you to fill with the cream. I don't like doing it this way because it only lets you fill as much space as in the cream puff. But with these, you can kind of overfill it a little bit. You get a little extra bit of that nice whipped cream. And then the final way that I wanted to show you guys is with...
Is this a special way?
Yeah, this is the special way. It's a little bit of fun. So this is what the other kind of piping looked like, the little shell with the star tip that we did. So you'll cut off the top of it. Kind of set that down. And then with the top piece, you're going to cut that one in half too. So what's going to happen is once when it's filled with the cream, you'll kind of have these 2 wings. And then these are going to be swan heads, and you'll stick them in so they look like swans.
Oh, you're so clever.
I told you we were going to be all fancy today.
My goodness.
These
I'll be
are-
glad if I could make the cream.
They're not as hard as you think they are. They look like a lot of work, but they're pretty easy. It's just a lot of work. So what we're gonna do next, I have cream puffs pre-made, as you can see. I've also pre-made the pastry cream. So we're gonna throw together some whipped cream real quick, and then we'll mix it all up, and then we'll fill them. So, I'm gonna put this on here.
Once again, I'm very hungry. Everything smells really good.
Yeah, looks good.
Don't forget, when you guys make it again at home, feel free to send us our pictures. We'd love to see your swans or your cream puffs. I do forward the pictures to Kat too. She enjoys seeing your creations.
I love seeing them. Whatever you guys make, I'm more than happy to take a look at.
It did cool off fast.
Yeah, it takes no time at all. Actually, I super forgot to add butter into the pastry cream that we did. So normally when you take it off of the heat and it's on the side, you would just toss in those couple extra tablespoons of butter. Just gives it a little bit more of a creamy consistency, but it doesn't change the recipe any if you forget. So
I got a question on that. You got 3 TSP. Is that teaspoon?
yes, that's a teaspoon. TBSP would be the tablespoon, and then a TSP would be. Oh, did I write teaspoon?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
TSP, what does that mean?
That would be a teaspoon, but I meant tablespoon. If you're talking about the butter, then it should be a full tablespoon.
3 tablespoons?
Yes, that's the
I was going to ask you how to do a teaspoon.
one. No, that was a spelling error on my part. It should be a
Okay.
tablespoon.
It's a real cooking show. It's all right.
Yeah.
This is all the stuff that we do in real life, right?
Right.
All right, so I'm gonna use the whole pint of the cream.
All right, this might be a goofy question for those people that are dairy free, just because I don't know. If you're making something like a whipping cream, a product that you could use.
I think that there is a heavy whipping cream that you can buy canned that's coconut instead of dairy. I think that would be in like the nature section of wherever you're shopping. I've seen it at Wegmans a few times. Sometimes it's in stock, sometimes it isn't, but there is a coconut version of whipping cream that is available. I kind of like to eyeball my sugar, but if you're looking for a measurement, it would be a 1/4 cup if you don't want it too sweet, and a 1/2 cup if you like it really.
Quiet. Shh. Quiet down.
All right, so I'm gonna take my pastry cream I have here. Just gonna let that into the pan. Once when the pastry cream sets, it kind of holds its shape a little bit, so you want to go in and break it up before you get to use it. Thank you. All right, so our cream puffs just came out of the oven. You're gonna be really hot. As the bottom of it is gonna be nice and golden brown. And all of the cracks and crevices are gonna be dried out. They're not gonna have like that really kind of spongy looking texture to them. They should be nice and fairly even in color.
Oh, mine look like that.
I will say one thing, this recipe is delicious and it's cute, but it's not the most summer friendly thing that you can make. With all of the cooking going on and having the oven on, if you don't have air conditioning in your house, it's going to get very hot. So just be careful what day you plan on making these. Actually, our pastry cream that we just made is ready as well. So I am going to use about half of this in this recipe. You can use a full pint of whipped cream to the full pastry cream recipe. But since I already have half a recipe in there, I'm going to use just half of this one. All right, I'm going to add in the strawberries before the whipped cream. You want to make sure that all of this, making sure that the pastry cream is nice and loose and the strawberries getting in there are done before you add the whipped cream because you don't want to deflate the whipped cream too much.
These guys are new.
Turn the oven off. Actually. I did forget about the swan heads. So we're gonna pop those into the oven. They take about 10 minutes to cook because they're so small and thin. But once when they look pretty dried out, then you can take them out. You can see on this one, the neck of it kind of cooks a little bit quicker than the other parts. But having a little color on it is no problem at all. All right, and I have my whipped cream mixed up to a stiff peak. And I'm just gonna dump all of that right in there. Maybe I won't use this. We're just gonna fold it really gently all together.
Do you have to put the whipped cream in there?
You don't have to. If you just want the pastry cream part, then you can leave the whipped cream out. Another option, if you still want both of the pastry cream and the whipped cream in there, is you can just pipe them down separately on top of each other. I used to do them where I would pipe pastry cream down into the bottom, and then on top of that, I would fill it up with whipped cream and top it off with fruits. So it's really whatever you're in the mood to do is up to you. All right. Gonna finish cutting up a couple of these cream puffs here. All right. So again, I have my pastry bag over a cup. Just gonna scoop in what I need. Yeah, they still need a little time.
Should I turn it down a little bit or just leave it?
No, it's fine. All right. So this is the pastry bag filled with our cream filling. We'll start just putting a nice little swirl You want to fill it a little bit extra so that it will go up into the top cup. And you have cute little cream puff.
Yum.
Good job.
Thank you. Oh, this is the one that I poked the hole in the bottom for. So you'll just stick the tip of the bag right into the cream puff. And then when you feel a little bit of resistance, it means that you filled the entire cup. So if you kind of want your cream puffs to have a really clean look, then you can do that. I just don't like it because I like to have extra filling on mine.
I'm with you.
Me too.
I mean, we are having dessert, so
Sure.
So who's gonna make these tomorrow or tonight?
I'm gonna
Anyone?
try tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah, please send pictures. I'd love to see them.
You'll get a picture if the pastry cream comes out.
They're beautiful.
They are.
They are beautiful.
Good job.
We'll fill it up, kind of fill it over the top a little bit.
Here comes our swan.
Put the wings on. Just tuck them in there. And we'll take one of our heads. Just let it all.
Aw, beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is nice.
Thank you.
Aw. Take a bite.
Can't eat that one. It's too
Hey,
pretty.
Karen, don't tease us. I could go for a couple of those.
You guys didn't, I mean, you guys get to watch, but you don't have to smell it the whole time it's happening right now.
Oh. I could go for a nice cup of coffee and 2 of those.
Oh, yeah.
Hoping we can start in-person classes soon so that you guys can actually eat everything that we're making.
See, I'll have to share the goodies, everybody.
That is real. That's so clever.
Swan family now.
Yeah.
Oh, you got one more. Oh, yeah, 2 more. Like a flock of swans.
Oh, those are just. Guess I made an extra high.
Okay. So, Marcy, I expect to see some swans.
Oh, yes. Lucky if I could make the cream puffs first. Then the cream.
The cool part is there's no wrong way to do it. So if it doesn't look like a swan, it doesn't matter. You're just going to eat it anyway.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. That's very clever, though, to do that.
I learned it in school.
That one's for Mom and Dad. She learned that in school.
My college degree meant something.
Oh, now we're going to get it all decorated in.
Have a
Look at
cute
that.
little plate up for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I'm gonna eat
you.
it now.
You just shove it right through the computer screen. We'll deliver it.
I know.
You guys have any questions for Kat?
Nope,
No,
but I'm gonna
beautiful.
try this. And hopefully that's better than the lemon curd.
Yeah. If you'd try the lemon curd again too, let me know how that one comes out.
I will. I'm still not over it.